Wanted to do a video today about the right rear spring and shock and the things that I see that's going on there that has actually changed since I was around years ago. I got dynoing on some Longhorn stuff, and I see some stuff and just wanted to give everybody my take on it. So let's roll the intro and let's dig into the right rear shock and spring. I've spent the last 30 plus years working on race cars, building race cars, and racing cars. And I'm here to help you better understand racing technology. Okay, I got dynoing a Longhorn right rear shock. I dynoed all the shocks recently. Two different manufacturers, and I really didn't recognize the name, so I don't know who these people are or where these came from. But the thing that I noticed the most about the Longhorn stuff, as opposed to what we were doing years ago, is the dramatic shift in how little rebound and how little compression there is on that right rear shock and spring. We used to have a rule of thumb that talked about the rebound would be 2 times the compression, and it was much higher than I've seen recently. What I've seen recently is the lowest. I used to take rebound out of my right rear when it got really smooth and slick. Well, now it seems like the baseline setting is where they are running now, or even less, and then they're probably even taking even more out. So I think there might be a problem there because we are still running a 200, 2.25, 250 spring over there. And when you get too little rebound over there, it's hard to keep the car on the right rear, because when you compress it and you have a lot of traction, you probably compress a 200-pound spring 3 or so inches more. So when you have your preload on your right rear and then you compress a right rear spring 2 or 3 inches more, you're up in the 7, 8, 900-pound range of load on that right rear. And then what happens is, if you have a rougher track or even kind of a muddy track and it's not polished slick, that 900-pound load on that right rear wants to force that car up if you don't have enough rebound in it. And it's good for the black stuff, it's good for traction, but I've seen a lot of Longhorns lately where they'll run good and they'll be running good on a consistent part of the track, and they pop the cushion one time and the car gets very upset, like violently upset. And I think that's kind of where the Rockets might have a little bit of an advantage. I've dynoed some Rocket stuff, and there's a little bit more tie down in that right rear than the Longhorn stuff was. So I think the Rockets can take a little bit more of abuse and a banging on the cushion, and you can just run those cars a little bit harder. Not saying they're tighter, you know, the Longhorns are pretty tight, but probably the Longhorns on a very rough track aren't probably as good as the Rocket stuff. It seems to me the Longhorn stuff needs to be run more consistently. It's more like a precision car. On a Rocket, you just take it and you abuse that thing, and the harder you abuse it, the better it works. So then we get into what I really want to talk about now is stacking the right rear spring. I've done it a little bit when we were swing arm, Z-link type of era. I've never done it on a 4-bar, but I think we're getting to a point where we might need to start experimenting with that, with the amount of rebound that we're taking out of these right rear springs now. Let me give you an example of what's going on. Like I mentioned, with a straight rate spring, a 200 or whatever, 2 1/4, 250, when you compress that thing, it's got all that load in there. And then, unless you have the rebound and you hit something, it's just going to want to flare it up, and the rebound can overload the load on the spring if you don't keep it loaded in with side bite. But with a stack deal, see, with a stack deal, it's soft so far down, you lock out the top spring, and then you get into a stiffer spring. And I'm almost thinking a stack spring thing over there, like with the bottom of like a 300 or 400 pound spring, and then whatever you can get. I don't think you want it real harsh where you go from like a 100 pound spring rate and then all of a sudden you boom, you hit a 4. I think you want it a little more progressive, but I think what you do want is you want to keep that car in attitude. So you want a softer top, so when that car rolls over and it gets to that bottom spring where you want to run that car all the time, the rebound won't push it up into that top spring because the top spring rate will be so soft. So the top spring rate will keep that car hunkered down over there, and then the only thing it'll do is it'll pop it up to where that thing comes out, I think. And then that soft top rate with that soft rebound will help keep that car loaded onto the right rear a little more consistent. It's like when the car is at attitude, instead of having like 600 pounds of preload on that thing or 800 pounds, it comes up, and then where a stack spring would have an advantage in is there's only like 100 pounds of preload when it's about to come off that cup. Whereas you, with a standard rate, you'd have 2 to 3, 400 locked in there, and it's going to want to overcome the rebound a lot easier on a straight rate than on a stack spring. The problem with stack springs is you got to be on top of them, and it's not a set it and forget it. You know, Ron Popeil selling you the Cookmaster on TV is set it and forget it. You got to be on top of those multi-rate, those stacked rate springs with the lockout. You got to be working with the lockout. And if you're new in on this and you're experimenting, there might be a lot of experimenting with rates, lockout heights on exactly where you want to be. So you got to be willing to either test or, you know, maybe run at a track and sacrifice a little bit for some experimentation. Maybe do a lot of thinking on it and figuring on it and kind of get a stack spring in there and then watch where kind of you want the attitude of the car to be, and then put it in your smasher and set that lockout so you know you have a total height there that keeps that thing on that locker at that point. So there's a lot of playing and a lot of experimenting to do. I don't think it's like I said, I don't have a big recommendation on this. Maybe a 400 pound bottom spring is all I can tell you. But I think it's someplace we gotta start thinking. And there's probably people out there that are doing it, bigger teams. Maybe some people are running them right now, and that's what's going on. Maybe I'm behind a loop on the top guys, but I haven't seen a whole lot online about people running stacked right rears or a whole lot of feedback. So I thought I'd make this video for you and give you the idea, or at least get the idea out to a mass crowd. You know, maybe it's talked amongst people behind closed doors and they're not telling people about it, but as far as the mass goes, I don't see this happening, and I see this to possibly be something in the future you might want to start experimenting with. So that's all I got today. I don't have any drawing board stuff or anything, so if you like this video, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. It keeps me motivated to keep making these videos. I know I took some time off there, but now I'm kind of cranked up and I got some stuff to say, so I'm going to keep putting them out as long as I have good feedback. So be safe, and we'll see you in the next video.